You think social credit only happens overseas. You picture cameras on every corner, a government database, one number attached to every citizen, a score that decides where you can travel, where you can work, and what kind of life you are allowed to live. But in America, the system developed differently. There was no single announcement, no national launch date, no official score displayed beside your name. Instead, the system appeared in pieces. A credit score here, an insurance risk model there, a tenant screening report, an employment background check, a fraud probability rating, a customer value category, a behavioral profile, each one created for a different purpose, each one controlled by a different company, and most of them hidden from the person being evaluated. This is Case A51-015, Social Credit Scoring. America built it first. I'm Daniel Mercer, and this file begins with a simple question. What happens when decisions about your life are made by scores you are never allowed to see? Imagine applying for an apartment. You have enough income. You have no eviction record. Your references are strong, but the application is rejected. The landlord may not know exactly why. The leasing agent may only see a recommendation on a screen. Approved, conditional, denied. Behind that result may be information gathered from credit records, address history, court databases, previous applications, identity verification systems, and third-party data brokers. Some of that information may be correct, some may be outdated, some may belong to someone else. But once the system produces a risk category, the category can become more important than the facts that created it. The same pattern appears in insurance, employment, banking, retail, online platforms, security screening. You are not given one social score. You are given dozens, and the people using them may not even call them scores. They may call them risk indicators, trust signals, eligibility models, propensity estimates, identity confidence, fraud detection, compliance screening. The language sounds technical, neutral, scientific, but every model makes a judgment, and every judgment can open or close a door. The official explanation is that these systems create efficiency. They reduce fraud. They identify risk. They help companies make faster decisions, and sometimes they do, but efficiency creates another problem. When a decision is made in seconds, how long does it take to correct a mistake? How do you appeal a system you cannot see? How do you challenge a profile when you do not know who created it? Disputed does not mean imaginary. It means the evidence is fragmented. The systems are private. The rules are buried in contracts, policies, and proprietary algorithms, and the final score may never appear on any document you receive. In the next part, we open the machinery behind these hidden profiles, where the data comes from, who collects it, and how an ordinary life becomes a permanent risk file. This is Archive 51. Every file has a story. Part 2, how the profile is built. A hidden score cannot exist without data. And in modern America, data follows almost every transaction, every address, every application, every account, every device, every purchase, every search. Every time you verify your identity, request credit, rent a home, file an insurance claim, or sign up for a service, another piece of information may enter the system. Most people imagine a single database, but the real structure is more complicated. Information moves through networks. Credit bureaus, public record aggregators, advertising platforms, insurance databases, background screening companies, identity verification providers, retail analytics firms, mobile applications, payment processors, and data brokers whose names most consumers have never heard. One company may know where you lived, another may know what you bought, another may estimate your income, another may track devices connected to your household, another may classify your neighborhood, another may decide whether your identity looks consistent. The final profile is often assembled from fragments, not because one organization knows everything, but because many organizations know something. The profile does not have to say who you are. It only has to predict what you might do. Will you pay on time? Will you file a claim? Will you leave a job? Will you miss rent? Will you dispute a transaction? Will you become expensive? Will you behave like people placed in the same category? That last question is critical. Modern scoring systems often do not judge only your personal history. They compare you with groups, people with similar purchasing patterns, similar addresses, similar devices, similar employment histories, similar financial behavior. The system looks for patterns. Then it assigns probability. But probability is not proof. A high-risk pattern does not mean a person will cause a loss. A fraud indicator does not mean fraud occurred. A behavioral category does not describe an entire human being. Yet once a prediction enters an automated workflow, it can begin to function like a fact. This is where invisible scoring becomes difficult to challenge. The company using the score may not have created it. The company that created it may have purchased the data. The company that supplied the data may have received it from another source. Responsibility becomes distributed. Everyone touches the file. No one seems to own the mistake. And the person affected may only see the final result. Denied, flagged, delayed, under review, additional verification required. There is another problem. Data does not always disappear when the original purpose ends. An old address remains. A disputed record remains. A phone number connected to another person remains. A name match remains. A risk label can continue moving even after the information behind it has changed. That is how a temporary event becomes a long-term profile. The system remembers because memory is profitable. Historical data helps companies build models. Models help them predict behavior. Predictions help them price risk. And risk scores help them make decisions without speaking to the person being judged. This does not require a secret government program. It requires incentives. Data collection is valuable, automation is cheap, and hidden scoring protects the method from public scrutiny. In the next part, we examine where these scores can affect real life, housing, employment, insurance, and the moment a digital profile becomes a physical barrier. Case A51-015 remains open. A hidden score becomes real when it changes what you are allowed to do. The first impact may look small: a higher deposit, a longer review, a request for more documents, a slightly more expensive offer, but small decisions can accumulate. And eventually, the profile begins shaping the person's options. Start with housing. Tenant screening systems can combine credit information, identity records, address history, court data, and rental records. The result may be delivered to a landlord as a recommendation. The landlord sees risk. The applicant sees rejection. Between those two moments is an algorithm that may never be explained. Now consider employment. A background screening report may include identity information, criminal records, employment history, education verification, driving records, or other data. But some employers also use assessments designed to predict reliability, retention, personality, or workplace behavior. The applicant may believe they are answering ordinary questions. The system may be converting those answers into a score, not a score of intelligence, not a score of guilt, a prediction. How likely are you to stay? How likely are you to follow procedures? How similar are you to previous successful employees? Once again, the model does not need to understand you. It only needs to place you into a category. Insurance operates on the same logic. Risk classification is the foundation of the business. Companies estimate the probability of loss. But modern models can use large amounts of information: claims history, location, property characteristics, driving behavior, financial indicators, consumer data, and other variables that may not appear directly connected to the policy. The official position is that better prediction allows more accurate pricing. But accurate for whom? A model can be statistically useful across millions of people and still be wrong about one person. If that person receives a higher price, a denial, or a restriction, the statistical success of the model offers little comfort. Then there is fraud detection. Banks, payment platforms, and online services constantly evaluate activity. A purchase looks unusual. A device changes. A login comes from a new location. A transfer does not match previous behavior. The account is frozen. The transaction is blocked. The customer is asked to prove they are themselves. Fraud systems prevent real losses. That matters. But the same system can trap legitimate users inside an automated suspicion loop. The more unusual your life appears to the model, the more suspicious you may become. Travel frequently. Use multiple addresses. Change phone numbers, work internationally, share devices, move between countries, use privacy tools. Behaviors that are normal for one person can appear abnormal to a machine trained on averages. And that is the deeper issue. Scoring systems reward predictability. The easier you are to classify, the easier you are to process. The more complicated your life becomes, the more likely you are to trigger friction. No official social credit number is required. A person can be restricted by a network of independent decisions. A landlord says no. An insurer charges more. A platform demands verification. A bank delays a transfer. An employer never calls back. Each decision appears separate, but all of them may be influenced by the same hidden economy of prediction. In the next part, we examine the defense. Why companies say these systems are necessary, why regulators allow them, and why transparency often stops exactly where the algorithm begins. This is Daniel Mercer, and this file is not finished. Part 4. The official explanation. The official explanation is simple. Scoring systems are tools. They do not make moral judgments. They calculate risk. Companies argue that automated models help process millions of decisions quickly and consistently. Without them, applications would take longer. Fraud would increase. Insurance prices would be less precise. Credit would become harder to manage. Housing providers would have less information. Employers would spend more time reviewing candidates. From an operational perspective, the argument makes sense. Modern systems are too large to run entirely through individual human judgment. A bank cannot manually investigate every purchase. An insurer cannot personally study every customer. A landlord managing thousands of units cannot interview every applicant for hours. Automation solves a real problem, but it creates another. A human decision maker can explain a conclusion. An algorithm may produce a result without revealing the path. Even when a company provides a reason, the explanation may be broad. Insufficient credit history, unable to verify identity, information from a consumer report, risk factors did not meet requirements. The person receives a category, not the calculation. The company may say the model is proprietary. The data may come from third parties. The weighting may be confidential. The exact variables may be protected as trade secrets. This is where transparency ends. The public can know that a system exists without knowing how it works. Regulation does provide some protections. Certain decisions involving consumer reports require notices. People may have rights to request information, dispute errors, or correct records. But the practical process can be difficult. First, you must know that a report was used. Then you must identify the company that created it. Then you must obtain the report. Then you must find the error. Then you must convince the company to correct it. And finally, you must hope the correction reaches every system that received the original data. That final step is rarely discussed. A false record can be corrected in one database while copies or derived scores remain elsewhere. A corrected fact does not automatically erase every conclusion built from it. There is also the problem of model opacity. Even if every data point is correct, the judgment may still be questionable. The system may decide that certain patterns indicate higher risk. But who selected those patterns? What population was used to train the model? Which outcomes were defined as success or failure? How often is the model tested? Does it treat certain neighborhoods, occupations, income levels, or behavioral patterns differently? A system can avoid using a sensitive characteristic directly while relying on variables closely connected to it. This is sometimes described as proxy discrimination. The model does not need to know a person's full identity. It can reproduce existing divisions through geography, purchasing behavior, employment history, or financial patterns. The official explanation is that the system is neutral, but neutrality depends on the data, and data comes from the world as it already exists. Past inequality can become future prediction. Past exclusion can become a risk signal. Past opportunity can become evidence of future reliability. The algorithm does not invent history, it industrializes it. And because the decisions are distributed across private companies, there is no single control room. No central authority, no master switch. That is why comparing the system to a national social credit program can be misleading. America did not build one score, it built a marketplace of scores. In the final part, I will give my conclusion on Case A51-015. What is proven, what remains disputed, and what the public should actually fear. The archive remains open. For now, this part of the investigation is complete. So, did America build social credit first? The answer depends on what you mean by social credit. If you mean one official government score attached to every citizen, then no. The evidence does not support that claim. There is no single universal American number controlling every part of life. But if social credit means a system where data is collected, behavior is evaluated, risk is scored, and opportunities are adjusted based on hidden profiles, then the structure is already here. Not as one system, as an ecosystem. Credit scoring measures financial reliability. Tenant screening measures housing risk. Insurance models estimate future loss. Employment systems predict workplace outcomes. Sophisticated fraud tools calculate levels of suspicion. Advertising platforms estimate value and influence. Identity systems measure confidence that you are who you claim to be. Each score has a limited purpose, but a person does not experience these systems separately. They experience the combined effect: a higher price, a rejected application, a frozen account, a delayed payment, a missing opportunity, a demand for additional proof, a decision made without conversation. That is the central finding of Case A51-015. The danger is not one number. The danger is fragmentation. When power is divided across dozens of systems, responsibility becomes difficult to locate. A government program can be debated in public. A law can be challenged. An agency can be investigated. But a private scoring network is harder to see. Each company claims to perform one narrow function. Each dataset appears incomplete. Each decision seems isolated. Yet together they can create a detailed architecture of control. Not control through force, control through access. You are free to apply. The system is free to reject you. You are free to dispute the result. But first, you must discover who made it. You are free to correct the record. But first, you must know the record exists. This is why the phrase social credit creates so much controversy. It sounds political, foreign, extreme, but the underlying mechanism is ordinary. Collect data, classify behavior, predict risk, adjust access, repeat. The American version did not arrive with a public announcement. It arrived through convenience, faster approvals, automated decisions, personalized prices, fraud protection, risk management. Every feature had a reasonable explanation, and every feature created another layer of observation. The unresolved question is not whether scoring exists. It clearly does. The unresolved question is how far the scores travel, which companies exchange them, how long do derived profiles remain active, how many decisions are made using categories that consumers can never inspect, and what happens when artificial intelligence makes those systems faster, cheaper, and more difficult to challenge. The next generation of scoring may not wait for an application. It may evaluate people continuously. Devices, locations, behavior patterns, communication habits, financial movement. The score may change before the person even knows a decision is being considered. That future is not proven, but the infrastructure required to build it already exists. Data collection, identity networks, predictive models, automated enforcement. The pieces are on the table. Case A51-015 remains classified as disputed, not because the scoring systems are fictional, because the full structure is obscured. No single document describes the entire machine. You have to assemble it from separate industries, policies, reports, lawsuits, disclosures, and individual cases. That is what Archive 51 does. We do not begin with the conclusion. We follow the record until the record stops answering. I'm Daniel Mercer. Case A51-015 remains on the desk. Comment the next file number you want opened. Subscribe to Archive 51 for more declassified investigations. Every file has a story.